James stood frozen in place at the high-end restaurant, like someone had just punched him in the gut. There she was, Zara, his ex-wife. Just 4 months gone from his life, but now sitting at a corner table, alone, and visibly pregnant. She hadn't noticed him yet, which gave him a few more unbearable seconds to take in the transformation. Zara was glowing, that unmistakable radiance that only pregnancy could bring. She looked more beautiful than he remembered, maybe more than he deserved to remember. Her dress, loose and soft, still couldn't hide the swell of her belly. 5 months? 6. James did the math. 4 months divorced. 5 or 6 months pregnant. His stomach twisted. She'd been carrying his child while he'd been unraveling their marriage for a pathetic, fleeting fling with his assistant. A child. His child. The one they'd fought for, cried for. The one the doctors said would probably never come. And she never told him. Had she been protecting herself? Or protecting the baby, from him? James? Are you even listening? His business partner, Richard, asked with a laugh, nudging his elbow. James didn't answer. Couldn't. His ears were ringing. The clinking glasses and laughter around the celebration table faded into nothing but static. Because at that exact moment, Zara looked up. And their eyes locked. Her expression changed like a storm passing over calm water. Surprise, then pain, then something cold and protective. She looked away fast, but not before placing a hand over her belly. Like she was shielding their child from him. Would you want a second chance if you were James? If your answer is yes, subscribe to follow what he does next. Sometimes the past doesn't just haunt you, it demands to be faced. Excuse me, James mumbled to his confused associates as he found himself walking toward her table, drawn by a force stronger than gravity. Zara, he said, his voice barely above a whisper when he reached her. Up close, he could see the subtle changes in her face, slightly fuller cheeks, the small worry line between her eyebrows that hadn't been there 4 months ago. James? Her voice was cool and controlled. What a surprise. You're pregnant, he stated the obvious, his eyes fixed on her belly. Excellent observation skills. They serve you well in business, I see, she replied, sarcasm edging her words. How far along? He asked, though he already knew the answer. 6 months next week, she said, her hand still protectively covering her stomach. The confirmation hit him like a tidal wave. Why didn't you tell me? He managed to ask, his voice cracking slightly. Zara let out a short, bitter laugh. Tell you? When exactly? While you were sleeping with your assistant. Or maybe during the divorce when your lawyers were trying to claim I was after your money? Or perhaps after you told me our marriage was suffocating you? Her eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her voice low, mindful of the upscale setting. James felt every word like a knife. She was right. He had been cruel in his selfishness, desperate to escape what he'd seen as a failing marriage. He'd blamed her for their inability to conceive, resented her sadness, and sought comfort in someone else's bed rather than working through their problems together. I have a right to know about my child, he said, immediately regretting his choice of words. Rights? Zara's eyebrow arched dangerously. You gave up your rights when you betrayed our marriage. I found out I was pregnant the day after I found you with her in our bed. I tried to call you for days after I left, but you were too busy filing divorce papers to answer. Each revelation was worse than the last. She had tried to reach him. She had known and wanted to tell him, while he had been rushing to end their marriage, thinking only of his freedom. Please, he said, suddenly aware that he was standing beside her table like a beggar. Can we talk about this? Properly? I'm meeting someone, she replied, glancing at the door. This isn't the time or place. Who? The question slipped out before he could stop himself, jealousy flaring irrationally. Zara's face softened slightly, perhaps at the obvious pain in his voice. My doctor, if you must know. We're discussing my birth plan. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by shame at his possessiveness. He had no right to feel jealous. He had thrown away that right. Zara, please. Just one conversation. I'm the father. Biologically, she cut him off. You're biologically connected to this baby. Being a father is something else entirely. Her words stung because they were true. He hadn't even known about the baby's existence until 2 minutes ago. What kind of father did that make him? Here's my card, he said, pulling one from his wallet with trembling fingers. My personal number is on the back. Please call me. Anytime. Day or night. She took the card reluctantly, slipping it into her purse without looking at it. I need to focus on staying healthy right now, James. This pregnancy hasn't been easy. Worry immediately creased his brow. Are you okay? Is the baby? We're fine, she interrupted. Just the usual concerns with my condition. Her condition, the fertility issues they had faced together for years. The problem they had been told would likely prevent them from ever conceiving naturally. The miracle that had happened just as their marriage fell apart. I've missed you, he blurted out, surprising himself with the raw honesty. Every day since you left. Zara looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. No, James. You missed the idea of me. The supportive wife who overlooked your late nights at the office and your emotional absence. If you had truly missed me, you wouldn't have replaced me so quickly. An older gentleman approached the table, dressed in a conservative suit. Miss Johnson? I apologize for being late. Dr. Franklin, not at all. I just arrived myself, Zara said, her tone warming instantly. The doctor glanced questioningly at James. He was just leaving, Zara said firmly, not introducing them. James knew he was dismissed. He had no choice but to nod politely and return to his business dinner, his mind and heart completely disconnected from the celebration happening at his own table. Across the restaurant, he watched Zara talking animatedly with her doctor, her hands occasionally moving to her belly. She was going to be a mother. His child would be born in approximately 3 months. And he was a stranger to both of them, by his own doing. As James mechanically raised glasses for toasts and smiled at jokes he didn't hear, one thought consumed him. He needed to fix this. Somehow he needed to earn back his place in Zara's life. Not as her husband, he had destroyed that possibility, but as a father to their child. A child that was nothing short of a miracle. When Zara stood to leave an hour later, she didn't look in his direction. James watched her walk away, her steps careful and measured. In that moment he made a promise to himself and to his unborn child. He would become the man they deserved, even if it took the rest of his life. The penthouse apartment felt emptier than usual as James loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. The floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city skyline, a view that had once filled him with pride. Now it just reminded him how alone he was, surrounded by wealth but lacking what truly mattered. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, remembering Zara's face at the restaurant. The hurt in her eyes had been unmistakable, but there was something else too, strength. She had rebuilt herself after he shattered their life together. Meanwhile, he had merely filled his days with more work, more deals, more hollow achievements. The affair with his assistant, Vanessa, had ended almost as quickly as it began. Once the thrill of forbidden temptation faded, he realized how little they actually had in common. She had wanted his wealth and status. He had wanted an escape from confronting his failing marriage. When Zara found them together, the look of betrayal on her face haunted him still. Vanessa was gone within weeks, off to find another wealthy man to target, and he was left wondering how he had thrown away 10 years of marriage for something so meaningless. James set down his untouched drink and walked to the guest bedroom he had converted to a home office. Opening his laptop, he typed "pregnancy 6 months" into the search bar. For the next 2 hours, he read everything he could find about the development of a 6-month fetus, pregnancy complications, and what to expect in the 3rd trimester. His child, their child, was now about the size of a head of lettuce. It could hear sounds, had fingerprints, and was developing sleep patterns. The baby might even be able to recognize Zara's voice. But it wouldn't know his voice. He hadn't been there for the morning sickness, the first ultrasound, the moment they heard the heartbeat. He had missed feeling the first kicks, watching Zara's body change, supporting her through the physical and emotional challenges. The more he read, the more the reality of his absence crushed him. Zara had gone through all of this alone because of his betrayal. His phone rang, startling him. For a wild moment he thought it might be Zara, but the screen showed his sister's name instead. "Lisa?" he answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "You sound terrible," his sister replied without preamble. "What's wrong?" James sank into his chair. "I saw Zara today." Pause. "And?" "She's pregnant, Lisa. 6 months pregnant." Another longer pause. "I know." The simple statement hit him like a punch to the gut. "You knew? How long have you known?" "Since she found out," Lisa admitted. "I'm her friend, James. I've been helping her through this." "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, anger flaring. "It wasn't my place," Lisa said firmly. "And honestly, would you have even cared 2 months ago when you were still seeing that homewrecker?" James couldn't answer. 2 months ago, he had still been trying to convince himself he was happier without Zara. That his new freedom was worth the price he'd paid. "She tried to tell you, you know," Lisa continued when he didn't respond. "The day after she caught you. She called you 6 times. I thought she was calling to yell at me," he said weakly. I couldn't face her anger. Well, she had every right to be angry. But she wasn't calling to yell. She was calling because the doctor had confirmed her pregnancy that morning. She was in shock, James. She needed you. Each word was another weight on his chest. He remembered seeing her missed calls, ignoring them, assuming she wanted to heap more guilt on him. In reality, she had been reaching out with life-changing news. I've really messed up, he whispered. Yes, you have, Lisa agreed, offering no comfort. But the question is, what are you going to do now? I want to be part of my child's life, he said immediately. I want to make things right with Zara. Making things right and getting her back are two different things, Lisa warned. Don't confuse them. I know, he said, though the thought of never winning back Zara's love created a physical ache in his chest. I just want a chance to be a father to my child. To support Zara, even if she never forgives me. She named him James, Lisa said softly. What? His heart skipped a beat. The baby. It's a boy. She's naming him James Jr. despite everything. She said she wants him to have something from his father, even if you weren't going to be in his life. Tears welled in his eyes, the first he had shed since the divorce. His son would carry his name. Despite his betrayal, despite his absence, Zara had chosen to create that connection. I don't deserve her kindness, he managed to say. No, you don't, Lisa agreed bluntly. But this isn't about what you deserve. It's about what your son deserves. He deserves a father who will be present, supportive, and worthy of respect. I want to be that man, James said with sudden conviction. I need to be that man. Then you have a lot of work to do, his sister told him. Starting with understanding exactly what you threw away and why. After hanging up, James returned to the living room and looked around the sterile, minimalist space. When they were married, Zara had filled their home with warmth, photos, books, plants, colorful throws. He had complained about the clutter, not realizing those touches were what made a house a home. His gaze fell on a small box on the bookshelf, the only item he had kept from their shared life. Inside was their wedding photo and Zara's engagement ring, which she had left behind on the day she walked out. He opened the box now, looking at their smiling faces. They had been so happy, so full of hope for their future together. That night, James slept on the couch, unwilling to face the empty king-sized bed that had once held their dreams. As he drifted off, he made a silent promise to the son he had yet to meet. I will earn my place in your life. I will become the father you deserve. Words are easy, James. I know. Actions matter more. I'm trying to show you with actions that I'm serious. Throwing money at problems has always been your solution, she replied. The words stung, but he recognized the truth in them. You're right. But I'm doing more than that. I'm making real changes. I'd like to tell you about them if you'll let me. In person when you're ready? She didn't respond for almost an hour. He sat staring at his phone, afraid he had pushed too hard too soon. Finally, Sunday. Coffee shop on Maple Street. 10 a.m. Relief flooded through him. I'll be there. Thank you, Zara. Don't make me regret this, was all she wrote back. James set his phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. For the first time in months he felt something like hope. Not for a reconciliation. He wasn't naive enough to expect that, but for a chance to be part of his son's life. To show Zara that he could change. That he was changing. He placed his hand against the cool glass, imagining he was feeling his son's kicks through Zara's belly. Soon he thought. Soon I'll meet you, little one. And I promise I'll never let you down. Sunday morning dawned clear and cool. James arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, too nervous to sit at home waiting. He chose a quiet table in the corner, ordered a herbal tea for Zara, remembering her new aversion to coffee, and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock she walked in. James's breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple floral maternity dress that accentuated her growing belly, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Even with the dark circles under her eyes suggesting troubled sleep, she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. She spotted him and walked over, her movements careful and measured. James stood, resisting the urge to pull out her chair or touch her in any way. For months ago he would have kissed her cheek without thinking. Now he had no rights to such familiarity. You're early, she observed, lowering herself into the chair across from him. I ordered you raspberry tea, he said, gesturing to the steaming cup. Lisa mentioned coffee doesn't agree with you now. Zara's eyebrow arched slightly. You've been talking to Lisa a lot. I needed to learn what you've been going through, he admitted. Since I wasn't there to see it myself. She took a sip of the tea, surprise flickering across her face. You remembered I like raspberry? I remember everything about you, Zara. The words came out more intensely than he intended. He cleared his throat. Thank you for meeting me. She set down her cup. You said you wanted to talk. So talk. James had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times, but now that she was sitting across from him, all his carefully prepared words evaporated. Instead, raw honesty tumbled out. I've been a fool. Worse than a fool, I've been selfish and blind. I threw away our marriage for nothing. I blamed you for our fertility struggles when we should have faced them together. I resented your dedication to your work because I felt it took attention away from me. I convinced myself I deserved more, that I needed someone who would put me first. But all I did was destroy the best thing in my life. Zara's expression remained neutral, giving nothing away. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to know that I understand what I did. That I take full responsibility. And because. He took a deep breath. Because I want a chance to be a father to our son. Not just financially but really present in his life. And that means rebuilding some kind of relationship with you, not as husband and wife, I know that's gone, but as parents who can work together for his sake. She studied him, her dark eyes searching his face. And if I say no? If I tell you I don't want you in our lives? The question cut deep, but he had prepared for it. Then I'll respect your decision, but I'll petition the court for visitation rights. I don't want to do that, Zara. I'd rather find a way forward that we both agree on. But I won't abandon my son. Like you abandoned me? The words were quiet but pointed. Yes, he acknowledged. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I can never undo that. But I can try to be better going forward. Zara's hand moved unconsciously to her belly. He's kicking right now. He always seems to know when I'm upset or stressed. Without thinking, James reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her stomach. May I? She hesitated, then took his hand and placed it on the side of her belly. For a moment, nothing happened, then he felt it, a strong, distinct push against his palm. Emotion welled up in his throat. That's our son, he whispered, awed. Yes, Zara said, something softening in her eyes. That's our son. She let him keep his hand there for another moment, then gently moved it away. What kinds of changes are you making, James? Real changes, not just words. He told her about the parenting classes, the nursery he was preparing, the restructuring at work. He explained how he was ensuring he would have time to be actively involved in their child's life, not just a weekend father who wrote checks. I've also started seeing a therapist, he added, surprising himself with the admission. He hadn't planned to tell her this. I need to understand why I hurt you. Why I was so willing to throw away what we had. I don't want to make the same mistakes with our son. This caught her attention. And, have you figured it out? I'm starting to, he said carefully. My father was physically present but emotionally absent. He provided financially but never connected with me as a person. I swore I'd be different, but when our marriage hit difficulties I fell back on what I knew, focusing on work, emotional distance, eventually looking outside our marriage for validation. I'm not excusing what I did. I'm just trying to understand it so I can change. Zara was quiet for a long time. Finally she said, I appreciate your honesty. And the changes you're making sound positive. But James, they're still new. How do I know they'll last? You don't, he admitted. I have to prove it to you day by day. All I'm asking for is a chance to do that. She sighed, looking down at her tea. What exactly are you proposing? I'd like to be there for the birth if you'll allow it. I want to support you through the rest of the pregnancy. Doctor's appointments, childbirth classes, whatever you need. After he's born, we can work out a co-parenting arrangement. I live 15 minutes from your apartment. I could be very involved in his daily life. And if I start dating someone? She challenged. If I eventually remarry? The thought was like a knife to his heart, but he kept his expression neutral. Then I would respect your relationship and work with both of you to ensure our son has stability and love. Zara looked surprised by his answer. Perhaps she had expected jealousy or possessiveness. Those feelings were there, burning beneath the surface, but he refused to let them dictate his behavior. Not anymore. I need time to think about this, she finally said. This isn't just about you and me anymore. Take all the time you need, he assured her. I'm not going anywhere. As they prepared to leave, James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. This isn't what you think, he said quickly, seeing her expression. It's not a ring or jewelry. It's a key to my apartment. In case of emergency or if you ever need anything when I'm not there. The building staff knows to expect you. The second bedroom is being converted to a nursery, but it's not finished yet. I wanted your input on the details. Zara took the box but didn't open it. This is moving very fast, James. I know, he acknowledged. But we only have 3 months until he arrives. I want to be prepared. She nodded, slipping the box into her purse. As they walked to the door, James carefully maintained distance between them, resisting the urge to place his hand on the small of her back as he once would have done. Outside, the spring sunshine warmed their faces. May I walk you home? He asked. No, she said, but gently. I need some space to process all this. Of course. Thank you for meeting me, Zara. She looked at him for a long moment. You look different. I feel different, he replied honestly. We'll see, she said, neither promise nor dismissal in her tone. I'll call you. James watched her walk away, hope and fear battling in his chest. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. A chance to prove himself. To earn his place in their lives. As he turned to head back to his apartment, his phone buzzed with a text. Zara, doctor's appointment Tuesday, 2 p.m. Dr. Franklin's office. If you're serious about being involved, you can meet me there. His heart leaped. Quickly he responded, I'll be there. Thank you, Zara. For the first time since seeing her at the restaurant, James allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't lost everything after all. Tuesday afternoon found James sitting nervously in the waiting room of Dr. Franklin's office, 15 minutes early for Zara's appointment. He had cleared his entire schedule, informing his executive team he would be unavailable every Tuesday afternoon going forward for family matters. The receptionist had given him a stack of forms to fill out as the baby's father, and he was struck by how little he knew about Zara's pregnancy so far. Medical history, previous complications, test results, he should have known all of this already. Should have been there from the beginning. Zara arrived exactly on time, looking surprised to see him already waiting. She wore a simple gray maternity dress with a light cardigan, her work badge still clipped to the pocket. She had come straight from the community center. You're early, she said, easing herself into the chair beside him. I didn't want to risk being late, he replied. How was work? Busy. We're organizing a summer program for the kids. An awkward silence fell between them. James searched for something to say, acutely aware of how their once easy conversation had become strained. They had been best friends before they were lovers, had talked for hours about everything and nothing. Now they were like cautious strangers, circling each other warily. Zara Johnson? A nurse called from the doorway. James stood quickly, offering his hand to help Zara up. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted it, her fingers warm against his palm. She released his hand as soon as she was standing, but it was a small victory nonetheless. They followed the nurse to an examination room, where she took Zara's vitals and asked routine questions about how she was feeling. James listened intently, filing away every detail. The back pain was still troubling her despite the massage therapy. She was having trouble sleeping comfortably. Her appetite was good, but certain foods still triggered nausea. When Dr. Franklin entered, he looked surprised to see James. Hello again, he said, glancing between them curiously. This is James, Zara said simply. The baby's father. Ah, the doctor nodded, understanding dawning. Well, welcome. We're doing an ultrasound today, so your timing is excellent. As Zara lay back on the examination table and lifted her shirt to expose her rounded belly, James was struck by the intimacy of the moment. This should have been familiar by now, something they had shared many times over the past 6 months. Instead, it was all new to him. The gel the technician spread over Zara's skin, the handheld device she moved across the bump, the sudden whooshing sound that filled the room. That's his heartbeat, Zara told him, seeing his expression. The rapid, rhythmic sound was the most beautiful thing James had ever heard. Then the technician adjusted the screen and there he was, their son. Not just a concept or an idea, but a tiny person with a head, arms, legs, a face. He's sucking his thumb, the technician pointed out, smiling. James didn't realize he was crying until he felt tears on his cheeks. He quickly wiped them away embarrassed, but when he looked at Zara, he saw her eyes were wet too. For the first time since their reunion, a genuine smile spread across her face as she watched the screen. Would you like to know the sex? Dr. Franklin asked, then caught himself. Though I understand you already know it's a boy. Yes, we confirmed at the 20-week scan, Zara nodded. Everything looks excellent, the doctor continued, pointing out various measurements and development markers. He's growing right on schedule. James absorbed every word, every image. When the technician offered to print several copies of the ultrasound images, he gratefully accepted his own set. After the ultrasound, Dr. Franklin conducted the rest of the examination, asking Zara detailed questions about her symptoms. James listened carefully, making mental notes about ways he could help make her more comfortable. A pregnancy pillow for better sleep, a footrest for work, a heating pad for her back. When the appointment concluded, Dr. Franklin shook James's hand. "It's good to have you involved, Mr. Wilson. Pregnancy and new parenthood are challenging enough with two parents, let alone one." James nodded solemnly. "I should have been here all along. I'm trying to make up for lost time." In the parking lot, an awkward moment stretched between them. James didn't want the afternoon to end, but he was afraid of pushing too far too fast. "Thank you for letting me come today," he said finally. Zara adjusted her purse strap, avoiding his eyes. "You said you wanted to be involved. This is part of it. Would you like to get some lunch?" he asked cautiously. "You must be hungry." She hesitated, then nodded. "There's a cafe around the corner. Nothing fancy, but the food is good." They walked together in silence, James consciously keeping pace with Zara's slower steps. At the cafe, he pulled out her chair and made sure she was comfortable before sitting down himself. Small gestures, but ones he hoped would show his attentiveness. After ordering, Zara finally met his eyes. "What did you think? About the ultrasound?" "It was..." James searched for words adequate to describe the experience. "Amazing. Miraculous. I can't believe I missed the previous ones." "There are videos," she admitted. "I recorded them on my phone." His heart leaped. Would you be willing to share them with me?" She considered him for a moment, then pulled out her phone, scrolling through her gallery. "Here," she said, sliding it across the table. "All the appointments since week 12. James watched each video with reverence, seeing their son grow from a tiny bean-shaped form to the fully formed baby he had seen today. In the background of each video, he could hear Zara's voice catching with emotion, the technician pointing out features, the steady whooshing heartbeat. All the moments he should have shared. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick as he returned her phone. "This means more than I can say." Their food arrived, interrupting the emotional moment. As they ate, James carefully steered the conversation to practical matters. "Dr. Franklin mentioned you're still having trouble sleeping," he began. "I've done some research on pregnancy pillows. There's one that's specially designed for lower back support." Zara looked surprised. "You've been researching pregnancy pillows?" "Among other things," he admitted. "I've been trying to educate myself on everything I've missed. Books, online courses, parenting groups." "Parenting groups?" She set down her fork. "You joined a parenting group?" "A prenatal class actually," he corrected. "Every Thursday evening. I'm the only one without a partner, but the instructor has been very accommodating." Zara was quiet for a moment. "Those classes are meant for couples to attend together." "I know," he said gently. "But I wanted to learn. To be prepared." She studied him, as if trying to reconcile this new, attentive James with the man who had betrayed her. "We were supposed to do all this together," she said finally, a hint of old pain in her voice. "We waited so long for this baby. Tried for years. And when it finally happened..." "I wasn't there," he finished, shame washing over him. "I can never make that right, Zara. All I can do is be here now and every day forward." Their eyes met across the table, the hurt between them raw and real. But there was something else too, a shared love for the child they had created. A foundation they might build on, even if the old structure had crumbled. "The childbirth classes at the hospital start next week," Zara said finally. "Tuesday evenings. If you're serious about being involved, you could come. As my coach, I guess." James felt a surge of hope. "I'd be honored. Thank you." As they finished their meal, the conversation shifted to the more mundane aspects of preparing for a baby. The equipment needed, the endless decisions about strollers and car seats and feeding methods. James listened attentively to everything Zara had already researched and decided, offering input only when she asked for it. "I'd like to pay for everything," he said when the topic of costs came up. "The nursery furniture, clothes, medical expenses, everything." Zara's expression grew guarded. "I don't need your money, James. I've been saving. I can provide for our son." "I know you can," he said quickly. "This isn't about what you need. It's about what I want to contribute. About sharing responsibility." She seemed to weigh his words, measuring his sincerity. "We can discuss specific expenses," she conceded. "But I don't want to be dependent on you." "Understood," he agreed, recognizing the deeper meaning behind her words. She had been rebuilding her independence since the divorce, creating a life that didn't include him. His financial support might feel like a threat to that hard-won autonomy. As they prepared to leave, James noticed Zara wince slightly as she stood. "You're back?" he asked, concerned. She nodded, pressing a hand to her lower spine. "It's worse in the afternoons." Without thinking, he moved behind her and placed his hands gently on her shoulders, guiding her to relax back against them. "May I?" For a moment he thought she would pull away. Then she gave a small nod. James carefully applied pressure to her shoulder blades, then moved his thumbs in small circles along the base of her neck, using techniques he had learned from online research about pregnancy massage. He felt the tension in her muscles gradually release. "Better?" he asked softly. "Yes," she admitted, stepping away from his touch. "Where did you learn that?" "YouTube tutorial," he said with a small smile. "I've been studying." Something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps or reluctant appreciation. "You really are serious about all this? About our son? About supporting you?" "Yes, sir." Completely serious. She gathered her purse, considering him with new eyes. "The childbirth class is at 7 p.m. next Tuesday. Meet me at the hospital entrance at 6:45. "I'll be there," he promised. As they walked to their separate cars, James felt a shift in the air between them. Not forgiveness, that would take much longer if it ever came, but perhaps the beginning of a new understanding. A tentative partnership built around the life they had created together. For now it was enough. The weeks that followed fell into a careful rhythm. Tuesday afternoons were for doctor's appointments, Tuesday evenings for childbirth classes. James arranged his work schedule accordingly, making these commitments his absolute priority. Not once did he cancel or arrive late, determined to prove his reliability. In the childbirth classes, he embraced his role as Zara's coach, supporting her through breathing exercises, learning massage techniques to ease her discomfort, and absorbing every detail about the labor and delivery process. The other couples assumed they were still married, and neither corrected this assumption. It was simpler that way, avoiding explanations that would detract from the purpose of the classes. Between these structured meetings, they developed a careful text message relationship. Brief check-ins, questions about baby preparations, articles and information they thought might be useful to share. James was scrupulous about not overstepping, never texting too late or too early, never expecting immediate responses, never pushing for more contact than Zara seemed comfortable with. He continued sending the weekly meal deliveries and added special treats he knew she liked. Dark chocolate, her favorite fruit smoothies, books from authors she enjoyed. Small gestures to make her pregnancy more comfortable without imposing his presence. At work, his transformation was becoming evident to everyone. The driven, sometimes ruthless businessman was evolving into a more balanced leader who valued efficiency over endless hours, who encouraged his team to prioritize their families, who no longer expected others to sacrifice their personal lives as he had once sacrificed his own. Richard commented on the change during their weekly strategy meeting. "You seem calmer," his business partner observed. "More focused but less intense. Impending fatherhood suits you." James smiled slightly. "It's given me perspective. All those deals I thought were life or death? They're just business. What really matters is waiting at home." "Home?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Has Zara moved in with you?" "No," James shook his head. "I meant the idea of home. A family. I'm preparing for my son whether Zara and I reconcile or not." As the weeks passed, small changes in Zara's attitude gave him hope. She began calling him with questions or updates rather than just texting. She accepted his offers to drive her to appointments when her back pain made driving uncomfortable. She showed him the nursery she was preparing in her apartment, seeking his opinion on the layout and color scheme. One Thursday evening, James was reviewing quarterly reports in his home office when his phone rang. Zara's name flashed on the screen. "Hello," he answered, immediately alert. "James?" Her voice sounded strained. "Are you busy?" "Not at all," he said, already closing his laptop. "What's wrong?" "My back is killing me and I can't reach the heating pad that fell behind the bed. Lisa is out of town and I wouldn't ask but—" "I'll be right there," he interrupted. 15 minutes. He arrived in 12, using the spare key she had reluctantly given him, for emergencies only, after her doctor had expressed concern about her living alone so late in the pregnancy. He found her lying on her side on the couch, face tight with discomfort. "Thank you for coming," she said, clearly hating having to ask for help. "No need to thank me," he replied, already moving toward the bedroom to retrieve the heating pad. "This is exactly what I'm here for." After setting up the heating pad against her lower back, He brought her water and the prenatal vitamins from her bathroom counter. Then, seeing how uncomfortable she still looked, he hesitantly offered, "Would you like me to try those massage techniques from class?" She nodded, too uncomfortable to maintain her usual boundaries. James sat on the edge of the couch and began gently working the tense muscles in her lower back, using the pressure points they had been taught in their childbirth classes. "Better?" he asked after several minutes. "Much," she sighed, relaxing against the cushions. "Thank you." He should have left then, but she didn't ask him to go, and he was reluctant to leave her alone in pain. Instead, he moved to the kitchen and began preparing a light meal from the ingredients in her refrigerator. "You don't have to cook for me," she protested when she realized what he was doing. "I know," he said simply. "But you need to eat and I'm already here." They ate together at her small dining table, the first time they had shared a meal in her apartment since the divorce. The conversation stayed safely on neutral topics: preparations for the baby, a fundraising event at her community center, a documentary they had both watched separately. As he cleaned up the dishes afterward, James noticed Zara watching him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked, feeling self-conscious. "You never used to cook," she observed. "Or clean up after." It was true. During their marriage, he had considered such tasks beneath him, hiring staff to handle the domestic aspects of their life together. "I've learned a lot in the past 4 months," he said quietly. "About what's important. About taking care of the people I care about, not just financially, but in the everyday ways that actually matter." Zara looked away, but not before he caught the flicker of something in her eyes. Not quite forgiveness, but perhaps a softening. "You should rest," he said, drying his hands on a kitchen towel. "I'll head out now that you're feeling better." "Actually," she said hesitantly, "would you mind staying a bit longer? I'd feel better not being alone tonight." James's heart leaped, though he kept his expression neutral. "Of course. I can sleep on the couch." "Thank you," she said, then added almost as an afterthought, "I trust you, James." With this at least. The simple statement meant more to him than she could possibly know. Trust was the foundation they would need to rebuild, whatever form their relationship ultimately took. That night, as he lay on her couch listening to the quiet sounds of her apartment, James felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. Not because he thought reconciliation was imminent, he wasn't that naive, but because for the first time he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Being there for his family. The next morning, he woke early and quietly prepared breakfast, leaving it warming in the oven with a note when he had to step out for an early conference call. When he returned an hour later, Zara was sitting at the table eating the French toast he had made, looking more rested than she had the night before. "You didn't have to come back," she said when he entered. "I wanted to make sure you were okay," he replied, setting his laptop case down. "How's your back?" "Better," she admitted. "The rest helped." "Good." He hesitated, then asked, "Would it be okay if I came by this evening? Just to check in?" She considered him for a long moment. "You don't have to keep taking care of me, James." "I want to," he said simply. After another thoughtful pause, she nodded. "Okay. But call first." It was a small victory, but to James, it felt monumental. That evening he arrived with groceries and cooked a proper meal while Zara rested. After dinner, they sat in her living room, the television on but neither really watching it, their conversation turning unexpectedly to the past. "I never asked why," Zara said suddenly. "Why her? Why then?" James had been dreading this question, knowing it would come eventually. He owed her the complete truth, no matter how badly it reflected on him. "There's no good answer," he began carefully. "Nothing that excuses what I did. But if you want to understand, I was lost, Zara. After the 3rd round of fertility treatments failed, I saw how devastated you were. I felt like I was failing you as a husband. Instead of supporting you through that pain, I started pulling away." He stared at his hands, unable to meet her eyes. "Vanessa made me feel successful, desired, uncomplicated. She didn't want babies or deep connection. She wanted my money and status, though I was too blind to see that at the time. I told myself I deserved happiness, that our marriage was already broken, that you'd be better off without me. You didn't even try to fix things," Zara said quietly. "You just gave up on us." "I know," he acknowledged. "It was the biggest mistake of my life. And I'll regret it until the day I die." She was quiet for a long time, processing his words. Finally she asked, "Are you still seeing her?" "No," he said firmly. "It ended weeks before you found us. I was trying to figure out how to tell you, how to see if we could repair our marriage." But then you walked in on us that last time when she came to my office. It was too late. She came to your office after it was over? James nodded miserably. She was angry that I had ended things. Said she'd tell you everything if I didn't give her a severance package. That day she showed up demanding more money. When I refused, she initiated things, and that's when you walked in. I should have pushed her away immediately, made it clear we were done. Instead I froze and you saw what you saw. Why are you telling me this now? Zara asked, her voice tight with emotion. Because you deserve the whole truth, he said simply. Not excuses, just facts. I betrayed you. I failed us. And not a day goes by that I don't hate myself for it. Tears filled her eyes, the first he had seen her shed since their reunion. I wanted to hate you, she whispered. It would have been easier. I know, he said softly. I wanted to hate myself too. In that moment, something shifted between them, not forgiveness yet, but acknowledgement. Of the pain they had both carried. Of the mistakes that couldn't be undone. Of the truth that needed to be faced before they could move forward in any capacity. The baby kicked then, as if sensing the emotional moment. Zara placed her hand on her belly, a small smile breaking through her tears. He always knows, she said. May I? James asked hesitantly. She nodded, taking his hand and placing it where their son was most active. They sat like that for several minutes, connected by the life they had created, the past momentarily set aside as they focused on the future growing between them. It wasn't resolution. It wasn't reconciliation. But as James felt his son's strong kicks against his palm, Zara's warm hand guiding his, he knew it was something precious all the same. Progress. At 36 weeks, everything changed. James was in the middle of a board meeting when his phone vibrated with Zara's ringtone, the special one he had assigned to ensure he would never miss her calls. He excused himself immediately, stepping out into the hallway. Zara? Is everything okay? Her voice was tight with worry. I'm at the hospital. Something didn't feel right, so I called Dr. Franklin. He told me to come in right away. Fear gripped James's chest. What's wrong? Is it the baby? I don't know yet, she said, and he could hear the effort it took to keep her voice steady. They're running tests. Dr. Franklin mentioned something about my blood pressure. I'm on my way, he said, already heading for the elevator. Which hospital? Memorial. 4th floor maternity ward. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hang on. He made it in 15, breaking speed limits and running red lights. When he reached her room, she was lying in a hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily around her and 4 in her arm. She looked pale and frightened, but her expression relaxed slightly when she saw him. You came, she said, as if she had doubted he would. Of course I came, he replied, moving immediately to her side. What did the doctor say? Preeclampsia, she told him. My blood pressure is too high and there's protein in my urine. They're worried about complications. James had researched enough about pregnancy to know this was serious. Preeclampsia could threaten both mother and baby if not managed properly. What's the treatment plan? He asked, trying to keep his voice calm for her sake. Complete bed rest for now, she said. They want to monitor me here for at least 24 hours. If my condition stabilizes, I might be able to go home on strict bed rest until delivery. If it gets worse. She trailed off. If it gets worse, they'll deliver early, he finished. But he's far enough along now that he should be okay, right? She nodded. 36 weeks is considered late preterm. They've already given me steroids to help his lungs develop faster, just in case. James pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. What can I do? He asked simply. You're already doing it, she admitted. Just being here helps. Dr. Franklin arrived then, looking serious but not alarmed. He explained Zara's condition in more detail, outlining the monitoring they would be doing and the potential scenarios they were preparing for. Best case, we manage the preeclampsia with bed rest and medication for another week or 2 and deliver close to term, the doctor explained. Worst case, we need to deliver right away if either Zara or the baby shows signs of distress. I understand, James said, his grip on Zara's hand tightening slightly. What can we do to increase the chances of the best-case scenario? Absolute rest, Dr. Franklin emphasized, looking at Zara. No work, no stress, no exertion of any kind. Your only job now is to keep yourself and the baby healthy. When the doctor left, Zara turned to James with worry in her eyes. What about my job? The summer program starts next week. I was supposed to finalize everything before my maternity leave. I'll take care of it, James promised. Just tell me what needs to be done and I'll make sure it happens. There's so much, she began, her breathing quickening with anxiety. The funding paperwork, the staff assignments, the parent communications. Hey, he interrupted gently, noticing the monitor showing her rising blood pressure. One thing at a time. We'll make a list and I'll handle everything. Your job right now is to rest and focus on staying calm for the baby. She took a deep breath, nodding. Okay, you're right. For the next several hours, James alternated between sitting with Zara, liaising with her doctors, and making calls to handle the logistics of her sudden hospitalization. He contacted Lisa to bring Zara comfortable clothes and personal items, called her community center director to explain the situation, and rearranged his own work commitments for the foreseeable future. When the night nurse suggested he go home to rest, he refused to leave. I'm staying, he said firmly. She shouldn't be alone. Zara was already half asleep, exhausted from the day's stress and the medications they had given her. You don't have to stay, she murmured. I want to, he replied, settling into the uncomfortable chair beside her bed. Try to sleep. I'll be right here if you need anything. She drifted off, the monitors beeping reassuringly in the quiet room. James watched her sleep, struck by how vulnerable she looked. This strong, independent woman who had rebuilt her life after he shattered it, who had carried their miracle baby alone for months, was now depending on him. He wouldn't let her down. Not again. The night passed in a blur of interruptions. Nurses checking vitals, medications being administered, occasional blood draws. Each time Zara stirred, James was immediately alert, offering water, adjusting her pillows, whatever she needed. By morning, the initial test results were cautiously optimistic. Her blood pressure had stabilized somewhat with the medications, and the baby's heartbeat remained strong and steady. If this trend continues, Dr. Franklin told them during morning rounds, we might consider sending you home tomorrow on strict bed rest with regular monitoring. But, he added firmly looking at Zara, you would need someone with you 24/7. No exceptions. I'll stay with her, James said immediately. Zara looked startled. James, you can't. I can and I will, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I've already spoken to Richard about taking leave from work. The team can handle things for a few weeks. But my apartment is so small, she protested. There's no guest room. You can't sleep on that couch for weeks. Then come stay at my place, he suggested. The nursery is ready, there's plenty of space, and the building has medical staff on site in case of emergency. She hesitated, clearly torn between her need for independence and the practical reality of her situation. It's not about us, James said gently. It's about what's safest for you and the baby. Dr. Franklin nodded his agreement. Having immediate access to help is important in your condition, Zara. And the less you have to move around, the better. Finally, she relented. Okay. But just until the baby comes. Just until the baby comes? James echoed, relief evident in his voice. That day, while Zara continued to rest in the hospital, James threw himself into preparations. He arranged for a hospital bed to be delivered to his apartment's second bedroom, creating a comfortable space where Zara could rest during the day with a view of the city through the large windows. He stocked the kitchen with all her favorite foods, set up a small refrigerator in her room for snacks and drinks, and installed a video intercom system so she could easily call for him from anywhere in the apartment. He coordinated with Lisa to pack Zara's essential items, making multiple trips to bring her clothes, personal care products, and the comforting objects she had gathered for the baby. The nursery, already nearly complete, received a few final touches. The mobile Zara had chosen, the special blanket she had bought, the framed ultrasound images she kept by her bed. When he returned to the hospital that evening, exhausted but satisfied with the preparations, Zara was sitting up in bed looking better than she had the previous day. You've been busy, she observed, noticing his fatigue. Everything's ready for you, he assured her. If your numbers stay good, we can bring you home tomorrow. She studied him for a moment. You didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did, he said simply. That night, as he again slept in the chair beside her bed, Zara reached out in the darkness and took his hand. Thank you, she whispered. Always, he promised. The next day, Dr. Franklin cautiously approved Zara's release with strict conditions. Complete bed rest except for bathroom visits, daily blood pressure and urine monitoring, and a return to the hospital at the first sign of worsening symptoms. A home health nurse would visit every other day to check her condition. The goal is to keep that baby cooking as long as possible, the doctor explained. But be prepared for an early delivery if necessary. As James helped Zara settle into the medical bed in his apartment, He could sense her discomfort at being back in the space they had once shared. The penthouse had been redecorated since the divorce. Warmer colors, more comfortable furnishings, less of the sterile minimalism she had always disliked. But it still held memories for both of them. "Is there anything else you need?" he asked after ensuring she had water, snacks, her phone, and the remote control all within easy reach. "No, this is more than enough," she said, looking around at the thoughtfully prepared room. "You've thought of everything." He smiled slightly. "I had help. Lisa was very specific about what you'd want." "James," she said hesitantly, "this arrangement, it doesn't mean—" "I know," he assured her quickly. "This is about keeping you and the baby safe. Nothing more." She relaxed visibly. "Okay. Good." The days that followed established a new, careful routine. James worked from home, setting up a temporary office in the living room where he could be within earshot if Zara needed him. He prepared her meals, helped her to and from the bathroom when necessary, and kept her company during the long, boring hours of bed rest. They talked more than they had in years. About the baby, about their separate lives since the divorce, about mutual friends and shared memories. Carefully avoiding the most painful topics, they rediscovered the friendship that had once been the foundation of their relationship. One evening, as James was reading aloud from a baby book while Zara sorted through tiny clothes, the monitor alarm suddenly blared. Her blood pressure had spiked dramatically. "I feel strange," she said, her voice tight with fear. "Dizzy. And my head hurts." James was already on the phone to Dr. Franklin, his free hand gripping Zara's. "We're coming in," he said when the doctor instructed them to return to the hospital immediately. 10 minutes. The elevator ride to the parking garage, the drive to the hospital, the rush through the emergency entrance, it all passed in a blur of fear and focused action. By the time they reached the maternity floor, Zara was experiencing severe abdominal pain. "The baby's in distress," Dr. Franklin announced after checking the monitors. "We need to do an emergency C-section." "Now?" Zara asked, panic in her voice. "But it's too early." "We don't have a choice," the doctor said gently but firmly. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high and the baby's heart rate is dropping. We need to deliver now." Everything moved quickly after that. Nurses prepared Zara for surgery while James was given scrubs to wear in the operating room. As they wheeled her bed toward the OR, she clutched his hand with surprising strength. "Don't leave me," she pleaded, all pretense of independence gone in the face of her fear. "Never again," he promised, his voice breaking. "I'm right here." In the bright lights of the operating room, behind the blue surgical drape that shielded Zara from viewing the procedure, James held her hand and spoke soothingly, trying to keep her calm as the medical team worked with quick efficiency. He didn't look at what the doctors were doing, keeping his eyes fixed on Zara's face, wiping away her tears, assuring her that everything would be okay. Then suddenly a cry filled the room, strong, angry, and perfect. "It's a boy," Dr. Franklin announced, lifting the tiny red-faced infant for them to see. "James Jr., Zara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He's here." "He's beautiful," James said, his own vision blurring with tears. "You did it, Zara. You did it." The medical team quickly assessed the newborn, wrapping him in warm blankets. 5 pounds 8 ounces, a nurse called out. "Good lung function. APGAR score of 8. Despite being 4 weeks early, their son appeared remarkably healthy. When the nurse brought the swaddled infant to them, placing him gently on Zara's chest, both parents stared in wonder at the tiny face. "Hello, little one," Zara whispered. "We've been waiting for you." James reached out a trembling finger to touch his son's cheek. "Welcome to the world, James Jr." In that moment, with his son's tiny hand gripping his finger and Zara looking up at him with exhausted joy, James felt something healing inside him, a broken piece sliding back into place. This wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. It was something equally powerful: family. Whatever happened between him and Zara, they would always be connected through this perfect little person they had created together. And for now that was enough. The neonatal intensive care unit became their world for the next week. Though relatively healthy for his gestational age, little James Jr., whom they had begun calling JJ for short, needed time to master feeding and regulate his body temperature before he could go home. James barely left the hospital, sleeping in the uncomfortable recliner beside Zara's recovery room and spending hours in the NICU with his son. He learned to change the tiny diapers, to hold the miniature body correctly, to feed him with the special preemie bottles. The nurses commented on his natural ability, unaware of how many videos he had watched and books he had read to prepare for this moment. Zara's recovery from the C-section was complicated by her preeclampsia, which didn't immediately resolve after delivery as the doctors had hoped. She remained on medication and close monitoring, her movements restricted, her strength slow to return. In her weakness, she had no choice but to lean on James. He helped her to the bathroom, assisted with her first painful attempts to walk, brought her meals, and wheeled her to the NICU for visits with their son when she was too weak to make the journey on her own. One evening, as they sat together beside JJ's incubator, Zara watching as James confidently performed the baby's care under a nurse's supervision, she said quietly, "You're good at this." James looked up, surprised by the compliment. "I've had a lot of practice this week." "It's more than practice," she observed. "You're a natural father." The words filled him with a pride he had never experienced in all his business accomplishments. "He makes it easy," James said, gently stroking JJ's tiny back. "I'd do anything for him." "I can see that," Zara said, something soft in her expression. "He's lucky to have you." The simple acknowledgement meant everything. After months of trying to prove himself worthy of being in his son's life, Zara was finally seeing him as a father, not just a biological contributor. When JJ was finally cleared to go home, a new challenge presented itself. Zara was still recovering, under doctors' orders to limit physical activity, unable to handle the constant demands of newborn care on her own. And James was determined that his son's homecoming would be perfect. "I think we should stick with the original plan," he suggested carefully as they prepared for discharge. "You both come to my place until you're fully recovered. The nursery is ready, there's the hospital bed for you, and I can help with JJ around the clock." Zara hesitated, clearly torn. "I had planned for him to come home to my apartment." "I know," James acknowledged. "And when you're stronger you can take him there. But right now you need help, Zara. Let me do this for both of you." After consulting with Dr. Franklin, who strongly recommended she have full-time assistance for at least a few more weeks, Zara reluctantly agreed. The homecoming was nothing like either of them had imagined during their marriage. Instead of the joyful, chaotic adjustment of new parents together, they were a carefully coordinated team of co-parents with clearly defined roles and boundaries. James slept in the nursery, taking night duty with JJ so Zara could rest and heal. During the day they shared baby care, with James handling the more physically demanding tasks while Zara focused on feeding and bonding with their son. The arrangement was temporary, they both knew. Once Zara was fully recovered, she and JJ would move to her apartment, and James would become the visiting co-parent they had discussed before the birth. But in these precious early weeks, they existed in a bubble of shared purpose, their past conflicts temporarily set aside in the all-consuming focus on their son. One night, about 2 weeks after coming home, James was walking a fussy JJ around the living room when he noticed Zara watching from the doorway of her room. She was still in the robe and pajamas she wore for nighttime feedings, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. To James she had never been more beautiful. "I thought you were sleeping," he said softly, continuing the gentle bouncing motion that was finally calming the baby. "I heard him crying," she explained, moving carefully to the couch. Her incision was healing well, but she still moved with deliberate caution. "Is he okay?" "Just a little gas, I think," James replied, patting the baby's back. "We're working through it, aren't we, buddy?" JJ responded with a tiny burp, his previously scrunched face relaxing. "Crisis averted," James smiled, sitting beside Zara on the couch. "Want to hold him?" She nodded, accepting the now calm baby into her arms. James watched as she studied their son's face, her finger tracing his tiny features. "He looks like you," she said after a moment. "He has your chin. But your eyes," James noted. "And definitely your stubbornness." That earned him a small smile. Poor kid. Stubborn from both sides. They sat in comfortable silence, both gazing at the miracle they had created. Finally Zara spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've surprised me, James." He glanced at her, uncertain what she meant. "With all of this," she continued, gesturing vaguely at the apartment, the nursery, the baby supplies meticulously organized for maximum efficiency. "The way you stepped up. The way you are with him." "Did you think I wouldn't?" he asked, genuinely curious. She considered this, choosing her words carefully. "I thought you might try at first. But I didn't expect this level of commitment. The 3 a.m. feedings. The diaper blowouts. The doctor's appointments and paperwork and everything." "I told you I wanted to be his father," James said quietly. "I meant it." "I know that now," she acknowledged. "And I'm grateful. For his sake." Something in her tone gave him courage to ask the question that had been on his mind for weeks. And for your sake? Does it make any difference? Zara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze still on JJ. It makes a difference, she finally admitted. I don't hate you anymore. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, but I don't hate you. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. As the weeks passed and Zara grew stronger, the time approached for her and JJ to move to her apartment as planned. James had been dreading this moment, knowing how empty his home would feel without them, how much he would miss the daily intimacy of shared parenting. But he said nothing, determined to respect her independence. The night before the planned move, he finished assembling the last pieces of baby furniture he had purchased for her apartment. Zara stood in the doorway of the nursery he had created in his penthouse, JJ sleeping peacefully in her arms. Everything's ready at my place, she said. Lisa helped set up most of it yesterday. Good, James nodded, trying to keep his voice neutral. I've installed the car seat in your car. The pediatrician sent over the updated vaccination schedule. And I've put together a reference binder with all his feeding information and the contact numbers for the doctors. Zara studied him for a moment. You've thought of everything. I try, he said simply. She shifted JJ to her other arm, wincing slightly at a twinge from her healing incision. James automatically moved to help, his hands gently supporting the baby's weight while she adjusted. We've gotten good at this, haven't we? She observed. The whole co-parenting thing. We have, he agreed, reluctantly removing his hands once she was comfortable again. Zara took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for something difficult. The thing is, James, my apartment is on the 3rd floor. I know, he nodded. But the elevator's been fixed. I made sure of it. Yes, but it's still a lot of steps if the elevator breaks again. And it's small. The nursery is basically a converted closet. And there's no doorman or security. James waited, unsure where she was going with this. JJ will have so much more space here, she continued, her voice growing quieter. The nursery you've created is beautiful. The medical staff in the building is a huge comfort, given how early he was born. And having you nearby for nighttime feedings and diaper changes has been really helpful. Hope began to stir in James's chest, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. What are you saying, Zara? She met his eyes directly. I'm saying maybe we don't have to move out right away. Maybe we could stay a bit longer. Until JJ is sleeping through the night at least. I'd like that, James said carefully. Very much. Just to be clear, she added quickly, this isn't about us. It's about what's best for JJ. Of course, he agreed, though his heart ached at the clarification. The guest room is yours for as long as you both need it. Zara nodded, seemingly relieved by his understanding. Thank you. As they stood together in the nursery watching their sleeping son, James allowed himself to feel a cautious hope. Not that they would reconcile romantically, he knew better than to expect that, but that they might build something new together. A family of sorts, even if not the traditional kind. We should get some sleep, Zara suggested. He'll be up in a few hours for a feeding. I can take it, James offered. You got the last one. She smiled tiredly. We'll see who he wakes up first. As she turned to go, James gently touched her arm. Zara? I'm glad you're staying. She hesitated, then nodded. Me too. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But as James watched her carry their son back to her room, he thought perhaps it was something just as valuable. A second chance to be a family, whatever form that might take. The temporary arrangement gradually evolved into a comfortable routine. Weeks turned into months as Zara and JJ remained in James's penthouse, their departure date unspoken but continually deferred. There were practical reasons: JJ's reflux issues, which required specialized care, Zara's delayed recovery from the C-section, the convenience of the building's amenities for new parents. But beneath these logical justifications lay a deeper truth. They had found a rhythm together, a way of co-parenting that worked remarkably well. By the time JJ was 4 months old, they had settled into a new normal. James had converted his home office into a private space for Zara, giving her somewhere to retreat that was truly her own. She had gradually brought more of her belongings from her apartment, making her spaces in the penthouse feel like home. JJ thrived under their shared care, growing from the tiny preemie into a chubby, alert baby with his father's dimples and his mother's curious eyes. Their relationship existed in a careful middle ground. More than divorced co-parents, less than a reconciled couple. They shared meals, consulted on parenting decisions, even occasionally watched movies together after JJ was asleep. But they maintained their separate bedrooms, never discussed their past romantic relationship, and carefully respected each other's personal boundaries. James had returned to work part-time, structuring his schedule around JJ's needs and Zara's gradually increasing commitments at the community center. They coordinated childcare like business partners, efficient and cooperative, neither making demands but both accommodating the other whenever possible. One evening, as James was preparing dinner while Zara gave JJ his bath, his sister Lisa stopped by unexpectedly. "So this is the new normal, huh?" she observed, watching James move confidently around the kitchen. "Domestic bliss without the relationship?" "It's working for us," he replied, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. "JJ is happy. Zara has the support she needs. I get to be fully involved in my son's life." Lisa leaned against the counter. "And you're okay with this arrangement? Indefinitely?" The question hit a nerve. James set down his knife. "What choice do I have? I broke her trust, Lisa. I'm lucky she allows me any place in their lives." "Their lives?" Lisa repeated. "But you're all living together. You're essentially acting as a family unit without acknowledging it." "We're co-parents," James corrected. "Very involved co-parents." His sister gave him a knowing look. "Is that really all you want to be?" Before he could answer, Zara entered with a freshly bathed and pajama-clad JJ. "Look who's clean and ready for bedtime," she announced, then noticed Lisa. "Oh, I didn't realize we had company." "Just me," Lisa smiled, immediately reaching for her nephew. "Come to Auntie Lisa, you clean little munchkin." As Lisa cuddled the baby, making the exaggerated faces and sounds that always made him giggle, James noticed Zara watching him with an odd expression. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Fine," she nodded, but her eyes lingered on his face a moment longer than usual. After dinner, when Lisa had gone and JJ was asleep in his crib, they found themselves alone in the living room. Zara seemed preoccupied, absently scrolling through her phone without really looking at it. "Penny for your thoughts?" James ventured. She set her phone down, meeting his eyes directly. "I overheard some of your conversation with Lisa. Before I came in with JJ. James's heart sank. "Zara, No, let me finish," she interrupted gently. "It made me realize something. We haven't really talked about this." She gestured between them. "Whatever this arrangement is." "Co-parenting," he supplied, using the safe, neutral term they had adopted. "Is that what we're doing?" she asked. "Because it feels like more than that sometimes." The air between them suddenly felt charged with unspoken possibilities. James chose his next words with extreme care. "What does it feel like to you?" he asked. Zara took a deep breath. "Like we're trying to rebuild something. Not what we had before, but something new. Something better, maybe." Hope flared in his chest, but he tamped it down, afraid of misinterpreting her words. "And is that something you want? To build something new?" "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm still healing, I guess, from everything that happened. But I can't deny that these past months, seeing you with JJ, seeing how you've changed, it's made me wonder." "Wonder what?" he prompted when she didn't continue. "If I could ever trust you again," she said simply. "Not just with JJ but with my heart." The rawness of her admission left him momentarily speechless. When he found his voice, it was thick with emotion. "I would never hurt you again, Zara. I swear it. These months with you and JJ have been the best of my life, even with all the challenges. I would do anything, to earn back your trust." She nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "I believe you mean that. Now." "But," he sensed the unspoken qualification. "But trust isn't rebuilt overnight," she said gently. "And I'm not ready to define what we are beyond parents to JJ. Not yet." Though disappointed, James understood. "I'm not asking for definitions or commitments, Zara. I'm just grateful for every day with both of you, whatever you want to call it. I think," she said carefully, "that I'd like to take things one day at a time. To keep exploring this new dynamic between us. Without pressure or expectations." It wasn't the reconciliation he secretly hoped for, but it was an opening, an acknowledgement that their relationship was evolving beyond mere co-parenting. "One day at a time," he agreed. "I can do that." The conversation marked a subtle but significant shift in their relationship. The careful distance they had maintained began to soften around the edges. Zara no longer hesitated to ask for his help with personal matters beyond JJ's care. James felt more comfortable sharing his thoughts and feelings about things unrelated to parenting. They began to rediscover each other as people, not just as parents to their shared child. One Sunday morning as James was preparing breakfast while Zara fed JJ in his high chair, she made an unexpected suggestion. "We should take him to the park today," she said. "It's beautiful out and he loves the swings." "Sounds perfect," James agreed. Then, after a momentary hesitation, "Maybe we could have lunch at that cafe you liked. The one near the lake." Zara looked up from wiping JJ's messy face. "Like a family outing?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. "Yes," James said simply. "Like a family outing." A slow smile spread across her face. "I'd like that." The day was everything James could have hoped for. They strolled through the park with JJ alternating between his stroller and being carried in the baby carrier strapped to James's chest. They took turns pushing him on the infant swings, laughing at his expressions of surprise and delight. At the cafe they shared a leisurely lunch, talking easily about everything and nothing while JJ napped in his stroller. To any observer, they would have appeared to be a typical happy family enjoying a weekend outing. And for the first time since their reunion, James allowed himself to hope that they might actually become one in every sense. That evening, after putting JJ to bed, they stood together in the nursery, watching their sleeping son as had become their habit. "He's growing so fast," Zara whispered. "I can hardly believe he was ever that tiny preemie in the NICU." "He's perfect," James agreed. "Today was nice," she finished when he trailed off. "Really nice." Without planning it, without thinking it through, James took her hand. It was the first time he had initiated such contact outside of helping with JJ or offering support during her recovery. Zara stiffened momentarily, then relaxed, her fingers intertwining with his. They stood like that for several minutes, hands clasped, watching their son sleep. Neither spoke, afraid perhaps of breaking the delicate moment. But when they finally left the nursery, Zara didn't immediately release his hand. Instead, she walked with him to the living room, their fingers still entwined. "Thank you for today," she said softly when they reached the couch. "Thank you for suggesting it," he replied. Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment, James thought she might lean forward, might close the careful distance they had maintained all these months. Instead, she gently squeezed his hand once more before releasing it. "Good night, James," she said, her voice carrying a warmth he hadn't heard in years. "Good night, Zara." As she disappeared into her room, James allowed himself a moment of pure, uncomplicated happiness. They weren't there yet, might never fully get there, but they were moving forward together. And for now that was enough. The next morning, as James prepared JJ's breakfast, Zara emerged from her room looking thoughtful. "I've been thinking," she began, watching him secure the baby into his high chair. "My lease is up next month." James froze, immediately concerned. Was this it? Was she planning to move out, to take JJ to a new apartment? "I was wondering," she continued carefully, "if it might make sense for me to give it up. Officially." He turned to face her, hardly daring to hope. "You mean, make this arrangement permanent?" "It seems silly to keep paying rent on a place we never use," she said practically. "And JJ is settled here. He loves his nursery." "And you?" James asked, his heart in his throat. "Are you settled here?" Zara met his gaze steadily. "More than I expected to be. This feels like home now. For both of us." "I want you both here," he said with quiet intensity. "For as long as you want to stay. Forever if that's what you decide." "I'm not saying forever," she cautioned. "I'm just saying, for now. For the foreseeable future. Because it works for us. For JJ." "For JJ," he agreed, though they both knew it was about more than just their son. Zara took a step closer. "There's something else, James?" "What?" "I've forgiven you," she said simply. "Not forgotten but forgiven. I realized it yesterday at the park watching you with JJ. I'm not angry anymore. I don't hold it against you." The words he had longed to hear for so many months nearly brought him to his knees. "Zara, You don't need to say anything," she interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know." Before he could respond, JJ banged impatiently on his high chair tray, demanding his breakfast. The moment broke, both parents turning their attention to their son. But as they moved through their morning routine, feeding JJ, cleaning up his inevitable messes, preparing for the day ahead, James felt a weight lifted from his shoulders. Forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation, wasn't a promise of a shared future beyond co-parenting. But it was a gift he had never expected to receive, and he treasured it accordingly. That night, after JJ was asleep, James found Zara sitting on the balcony, gazing out at the city lights. He joined her silently, taking the chair beside her. "Beautiful night," he observed. She agreed. Then after a pause, I've been thinking about what forgiveness means. What comes after? James waited, giving her space to continue in her own time. When I married you, she said finally, I thought we'd be together forever. When you betrayed me, I thought I'd hate you forever. Both were wrong. She turned to look at him directly. The future isn't set in stone, James. We create it with each choice we make. What choice are you making now? He asked softly. To be open to possibilities, she said. To acknowledge that the James I see today, the devoted father, the supportive co-parent, the man who drops everything when JJ or I need him, is not the same man who broke my heart. Hope bloomed in his chest, cautious but undeniable. What does that mean for us? Zara reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. It means I'm ready to find out what comes next. Together. It wasn't a declaration of love rekindled. It wasn't a promise of happily ever after. But as their fingers intertwined under the stars, with their son sleeping peacefully inside, James knew it was the beginning of something new. Something built on stronger foundations than before. A second chance. 1 year after that fateful encounter at the restaurant, 16 months since their divorce, 8 months since JJ's birth, James stood in the kitchen of the penthouse, putting final touches on a special dinner. JJ was already asleep in his nursery, monitored by the state-of-the-art baby camera James had installed. The table was set with their best dishes, candles waiting to be lit, flowers arranged in the crystal vase that had been a wedding gift from Zara's parents. It was, he reflected, their first official date since the divorce. After months of cautious friendship, of rebuilding trust through the shared project of parenting their son, Zara had surprised him that morning with a simple question. Would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Just the two of us. Now, as he checked the roast chicken, her favorite, and adjusted the temperature of the wine, James felt a nervous anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just dinner between co-parents. This was a deliberate step toward something more. The sound of Zara's door opening drew his attention. He turned, words of greeting dying on his lips as he saw her. She wore a simple blue dress he had never seen before, her hair loose around her shoulders the way he had always loved it. She looked beautiful, but it was the shy smile on her face that took his breath away. Hi, she said, suddenly seeming uncertain. Is this too much? I wasn't sure what to wear for a first date with someone you've been married to before. You look perfect, he managed, his voice hoarse with emotion. Absolutely perfect. The awkwardness dissolved into laughter, breaking the tension. James lit the candles, poured the wine, and they settled into dinner with the easy conversation of people who knew each other well but were discovering each other anew. JJ went down easily tonight, Zara observed, accepting the plate James offered. He didn't even need the second story. He had a big day, James smiled. That crawling is wearing him out. They talked about their son, of course, he was the center of their shared world, but also about other things. Zara's new program at the community center, James's evolving business philosophy, books they had read, dreams they still harbored. As they finished dessert, the chocolate soufflé he had spent hours perfecting, Zara set down her spoon and looked at him directly. I need to ask you something, James. Something important. His heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. Anything. Why did you stay? She asked. After JJ was born, after I recovered, when the practical reasons for living together were gone. Why did you keep trying? Most men in your position would have settled for weekend visitation and moved on. James considered the question carefully, knowing his answer mattered deeply. Because you and JJ are my family, he said simply. And I learned too late that nothing matters more. Not work, not success, not freedom. Family is everything. He took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the only path forward. And because I still love you, Zara. I never stopped. Even when I was too blind and selfish to act like it, I loved you. I always will. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. I tried so hard not to love you anymore, she confessed. After what happened, I thought loving you made me weak. Foolish. It doesn't, James said firmly. It makes you the strongest person I know. To be capable of forgiveness, of giving second chances, that's true strength. I do love you, she whispered, the words he had longed to hear. But I'm scared, James. Scared of being hurt again. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I can't promise I'll never hurt you, he said honestly. No one can promise that. But I can promise I'll never betray you again. I can promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of your trust. Of your love. Zara stood, still holding his hand, and moved around the table until she stood before him. James rose to meet her, their bodies close but not touching except for their clasped hands. "I want to try again," she said softly. "Not pick up where we left off but start something new. Something better." "Yes," he breathed, hardly daring to believe what was happening. "Anything. Everything." She reached up, her free hand touching his face with a tenderness he had thought lost forever. "Kiss me, James." He did, gently at first, then with growing passion as she responded, her arms winding around his neck as his encircled her waist. It was both familiar and entirely new, a homecoming and a beginning. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Zara rested her forehead against his. "We take it slow," she cautioned. "One day at a time." "As slow as you need," he agreed. "We have all the time in the world." That night, they slept in the same bed for the first time since the divorce, just sleeping, holding each other, relearning the comfort of shared warmth and synchronized breathing. When JJ's cries came through the monitor at 2 a.m., they rose together, working in sleepy harmony to soothe their son back to sleep. In the soft glow of the nursery night light, watching Zara rock JJ against her shoulder, James was struck by how life had come full circle. A year ago, he had stood frozen in that restaurant, seeing his pregnant ex-wife for the first time, consumed by regret for all he had thrown away. Now here they were, a family finding its way back together, stronger for having been broken. Zara caught him watching them, a question in her eyes. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," he explained, "to have this second chance." "We both are," she said softly. "All three of us." As they returned to bed, JJ again peaceful in his crib, James pulled Zara close against his chest, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I love you," he whispered. "I'll spend the rest of my life showing you how much." "I know," she replied, her voice heavy with sleep. "I love you too." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be challenges ahead, old wounds that might occasionally reopen, trust that would need continual reinforcement. Their path forward wouldn't always be smooth. But as James drifted toward sleep, his wife in his arms and his son sleeping safely nearby, he knew with absolute certainty that they would face whatever came together. The family he had nearly lost through his own foolishness had given him a gift beyond price, a second chance to be the husband and father they deserved. This time he wouldn't waste it,